Strikes and protests are part of the democratic world. Them happening all the time isn't a cause for issue. If you live somewhere no protests happen and people appear happy all the time, that's when you should worry. The USA might have its problems, but at least people can voice their concerns there, right? In this video, let's talk about how the largest union has rejected the contract, which is striking fears of a strike. Starting off, tension in the air. The holiday season is upon us, and we can practically hear kids dancing to the tunes of Jingle Bells. But things aren't very easy when it comes to railways, even during this holiday season. Apparently, the holiday cheer didn't infect them because workers at the heart of the supply chain are threatening to go on strike once again. As you might have heard, 4 freight rail unions, with a combined membership that's close to 60,000 rail workers, have now voted down the 5-year contract agreement which was brokered by the Biden administration. All this happened in September, and the latest rejections that they faced came on Monday from the largest of the unions that represents around 28,000 conductors, yardmen, and brakemen. The good thing is that 8 other unions approved the deal, but there's a fear that they'll also be pulled back into the labor dispute. You know what it is? Unity. If one union decides to go on strike, all of the unions representing around 115,000 freight rail workers will honor it, no matter what their stance is. Next up, the billion-dollar loss. And the result of that is not just going to bring freight trains to a sudden halt, but some Amtrak and commuter rail systems that operate on tracks and are owned by the freight railroads are also not going to work. This isn't a good look for the government and is going to have some serious repercussions because roughly 30% of freight in the USA is moved by rail. Everything from chlorine to cars to corn is moved through that. And the Association of American Railroads estimated that a nationwide rail shutdown could cost the country a lot of money. In fact, $2 billion a day in lost economic output. There's more to this because the 2 largest rail unions have split on contract votes. And in September, the 2 largest rail unions, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen and Smart Transportation Division, came to Washington to try to resolve their differences with the railroad companies. More on this, the insane policies. There was then a marathon negotiation session held by U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh that produced a deal that the union leaders thought would be accepted by their rank and file. It was because of this deal that the workers got a 24% raise over 5 years. Not just that, but they're also going to get additional personal days and caps on healthcare costs. It also includes some changes to the railroad's strict attendance policies, which allow workers to attend to their medical needs without them having to face penalties for missing work. Well, before that, even if they were sick, they'd have to face penalties. Imagine getting fined for being sick. That's brutal. When all this was modified, President Biden said it was a win for all sides in the U.S. economy because now they won't be losing $2 billion a day. And everyone was happy that it happened, as the railroads called it the most generous contract in modern history. It was because of this that after approval, workers were going to see an average payout of $16,000 in back raises and bonuses. Still, this was not going to be the end of it all. The workers still had to vote on the contract, and recently the ballots from the 2 largest unions were tallied. Speaking of the Democratic vote, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, which represents roughly 23,000 workers, voted to approve the deal with 53.5% of the vote. But it was the Smart Transportation Division, which represents 28,000 conductors, brakemen, yardmen, and others, who rejected the agreement. In fact, 50.87% of their people said no. The Smart TD president, Jeremy Ferguson, actually said that the members of the union have spoken with their vote, and it's now back to the bargaining tables for their operating craft members. He continued that all of that could be settled through negotiations and without any strike. That settlement would be in the best interests of the workers, shippers, and railroads, and most of all, the American people. Now that deadline is nearing, and it's going to be all decided on the 8th of December. Smart TD and the 3 other unions who had previously rejected the contract deals have now returned to the bargaining table. And if no agreement is reached by the date that we just told you about, 2 things could happen. 1, the railroad could lock all the workers out, or second, the workers could go on strike. Everyone's been worried about the decision and what it could mean for the people. The Association of American Railroads has also said that the rail companies are ready to reach new deals grounded in the original outline given by the President's Emergency Board. He has, though, warned that the window for coming up with that agreement was starting to close. Last of all, the decision decision needs to be made. For this, the AAR president and CEO Ian Jeffries said in a statement that they need to be clear because if the remaining unions don't accept an agreement, Congress got to be prepared to act and avoid a $2 billion loss every day. Things won't be as dire as you might think, though, because Congress has the power to intervene if workers strike. It's the Railway Labor Act that allows the legislative body to take any kind of action to get trains running again. And some of these measures include imposing some versions of the contract or extending the status quo, which will kick any decision to the next one. It was after a series of town hall meetings during the last month that union leaders held back from telling their engineers and conductors how to vote, but also warned that if they rejected the contract, that it was in favor of a strike, the matter would go out of their hands. Dennis Pierce, who is the national president of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, went on to say that no matter what, the idea that Congress will let them shut down the nation's economy at any length of time is very unlikely. This means they've got to work together to form a decision that will be beneficial for everyone. Otherwise, things might actually get out of hand. Now that you're aware that the issue is about the rejection of the contract, let's talk about high speed and if they can finally become a reality in the USA. Moving on, can high-speed rail finally become a reality in the US? First off, Superman and kryptonite. As we know, technology is improving every day, but if technology, politics, and climate action work together, they just might be able to put high-speed transit on the fast track. Though the US may be better at a lot of things than most countries, it's very far behind on high-speed rail compared to the other advanced countries. It's kind of started to look like the US is Superman and high-speed rails are its kryptonite. But then there are people who believe that maybe high-speed rail is Superman and America's car culture is its kryptonite. Next up, America's car culture. Do you ever wonder why the US doesn't have good high-speed trains? Or how shocking it is that the USA is so behind on getting its hands on truly amazing high-speed rail? Oh, and also it's so far behind that because of its car culture, the high-speed rail system won't even work in the US. Yep, that was a shocker for us too. But what if all that is about to change? What if the US is about to have a major shift? Well, it's not going to be easy, and let us tell you, if it does happen, it's not going to be perfect either. But not all hope is lost. Lastly, new hope. An expert in the field has highlighted a few major projects, including the California High-Speed Rail Authority project that'll connect San Francisco and Los Angeles and Brightline West project that'll connect LA to Las Vegas. We're sure you must have heard of Siemens Mobility, which is one of two competent teams involved in the California High-Speed Rail Authority project and is also a part of the LA to Las Vegas project. So if it's in their hands, you don't need to worry. The San Francisco and LA train will take passengers to their destination in less than 3 hours, while driving takes around 7 hours. Not just that, but these trains will help reduce pollution. In fact, it'll help keep more than 3,500 tons of damaging pollutants out of the air. So people of America, you just might see high-speed rails taking you to your destination soon enough. That's it from our side for today. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions or thoughts about a large rail union rejecting a contract that's sparking fears of a strike, let us know in the comments below. See you in the next one.